Episode 72 of the Back of the Class podcast. I'm Glenn.
I'm Ben.
And before we start off this week's episode, I'd like to say huge thank you to our sponsors: VIR Electrical, Members First Credit Union, the Balgriffin Inn, Coco's Cakes, and Orm. And this week we're joined by...
Introduce yourself.
Caroline Foran. Sorry, I'm in awe of the amount of sponsors you have. That is amazing. Thank you so much.
And the Cup Price Jewellers as well.
I heard their ad the other day. Very good. They stick in your head. Thank you, lads, so much for having me. I'm really honoured to be here.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
For the people who may not know who you are or what
How
you
dare
do,
they?
introduce yourself and what do you hope they'll learn off this episode?
Okay, so I am Caroline and I'm an author and a podcaster. Haven't got as good guests as you guys have had, but I'm trying my best. And I try to help people better understand and manage anxiety and mental health. Anxiety particularly, as that was my experience, and I was a very anxious kid and I was quite an anxious teenager, and then it all came crashing down on me in my mid-20s, and there was so much shame and stigma, and I suffered so much more than I ever needed to. So I hope people come away from this knowing how much it makes sense to feel anxiety, how it doesn't say anything negative about you, how normal it is, and also I want people to know that you have every reason to believe that you can come out the other side of it if it's like really affecting you right now.
And what would you say the 3 biggest lessons you've learned of anxiety is?
Okay, 3. The first one is that you have to focus on your body as opposed to your mind. I think like over the last few years there's been this like explosion of information and books around how like we are what we think, and to change your thoughts and to get ahead of anxiety. And you know, people say you are what you think and your thoughts are your reality, and to me that actually can be really dangerous for some people whose thoughts can be intrusive, or like you can't always help how your thoughts are. Like if you're feeling very anxious and you're feeling scared, yet you're telling yourself, oh, I need to not think that way. It's so much pressure and it's so hard to do. So for me, one of the biggest learnings was to move away from that, asking yourself to not think that way, and just to meet the anxiety where it is in your body and soothe your nervous system. And when you work on that and you can signal that safety to your nervous system, and it doesn't matter if there's nothing, like actually there's no actual threat, it's just your body's perception of threat and it just reacts. But that will signal up towards your mind, and then your mind will eventually calm down and the thoughts will kind of follow the bodily feeling of safety. But for so long I was trying to go from the top down, trying to not be a person who thought anxiously, who felt anxious, not thinking of the worst case scenario, not letting my mind run away on me, and that was getting me nowhere and was making the anxiety so much worse. So that's one. Another thing is my perception of anxiety was very off, and I thought of it as like a virus or something. People still say to me, do you think anxiety can be cured? And I'm like, no, that is not the nature of anxiety. It's not a rash on your skin. It is not, it's such a normal bodily response that every one of us is capable of having in response to stressors that life brings us. And it doesn't matter what age you are, what kind of privilege or background you have, your nervous system just reacts. So for me to stop seeing it as something that was like out to get me, and to stop being so afraid of it, and to start to realize that it's just me, in whatever part of me that was needing more reassurance and feeling out of step with other people, especially as a teenager, when it's really high stakes and you want to fit in. That was a hard time for me. So just to realize that like this, it's not what anxiety says about you, it's what anxiety is saying to you, because usually there's something trying to be communicated. Maybe the people you're hanging out with are making you feel like not great, or there's pressure, or you know, there's usually a message in there somewhere. And then a third thing, I guess this is a recent enough one, and I just gave a talk on this today, and it's the awareness that everything that you know and have learned, and all of your skills and all of your all the things about you that are brilliant and will eventually be employable for people who are still in school, They don't change and they don't go away just because you're having a hard time. They're always there. That's your capability and what you bring to the table and what you have to offer. And even as a friend and as a person, like, that doesn't change. But sometimes your capacity changes, and sometimes how you show up in life looks a bit different. And maybe that's because of a mental health struggle, but it does not in any way mean that you are not capable of the things you want to do. So you don't have to be anxiety free, or you don't have to have a perfect bill of mental health in order to do the things you want to do. You just kind of take it along with you, and you take the fear out of it.
It doesn't get easier, you just get stronger.
I think it does. Yeah, I mean, like, probably both ways. Like, I think I have gotten stronger and I've gotten older, and my nervous system has settled a lot because I no longer have all of the self-doubt that, like, completely dominated my life, especially when I was like 17, 18, 19. I missed like most of 5th year of school. Like, I was not there at all. I was so unwell, and I didn't know it was anxiety. I thought I just never felt well in my stomach, and I never thought, I really didn't think I'd ever come out the other side. I thought there was something so wrong with me that nobody could explain, and no doctor could sort of find what was going on. But I would say now that it's not that it's gotten easier to manage. I just don't deal with it anymore. I just don't experience anxiety or panic attacks the way I used to. And I think a huge part of that, obviously, it's all the work I've done with the book and everything that's in there. But it's like not being afraid of our mental health and not being afraid to fall apart, because we all can and will sometimes. And sometimes I don't know who it was that said the quote, like, hitting rock bottom is like a really solid foundation to kind of build yourself back up from. So yeah.
Well, what did the anxiety look like for you, and how did you know you suffered with it?
So for most of my life I didn't know, and I just, like I was saying, it was all like my gut. I just never felt well. There was always a nervous feeling in my stomach, and I was chasing all these different things, like, is it this allergy or that intolerance, or, you know, I was looking so desperately for something that would make it make sense. And I think anxiety always manifested that way because that was maybe my sensitive area. For some people it might just be like migraines or something, or their skin might react, or maybe it will bypass the body and just go straight to like panic and anxious thoughts and stuff. But it wasn't until I was 25, and I think that's really interesting, because when we're 25, by the time we're 25, the part of our brain that can help us stay calm and like rationalize anxiety, it's only fully formed by the time we're 25. So like, your brains, though they are amazing, they're still very much under construction. And it seems to affect people around that age, when it's like you're just really on the cusp of adulthood and you're shaking off a lot of the self-doubt and everything of being younger. What was the question? I just did. You know what? I do this. I probably have ADHD. I go off on a tangent and I forget what I'm saying.
I asked what did the anxiety look like, and how did you know you suffered it?
So it looked very, very physical for me. You wouldn't necessarily have known that I was anxious unless I told you, and I would have told anyone, because I wanted someone to say, oh, me too, or that's okay, it's, you know, that's fine. But I guess it didn't look like anything, but I would have had very visceral panic attacks, but they were inside my body, and I wasn't breathing into like a brown paper bag or anything. It was just like a bomb going off in my body. And if you knew me really well, you might see me kind of glaze over a bit and be like, are you okay? Like, I feel like you've just kind of detached a bit. And so I wouldn't be like flapping about in any kind of visual way. But the thoughts were horrific. It was as physical as it was mental. And for me, it got so bad. Like, it was like the anxiety was like stuck in my limbs, in my body, like it had kind of crystallized. And it was like my body was constantly gearing up to like flee a predator or something, but there was nothing to flee from. So it's just sort of like a ping pong machine or whatever those things are in an arcade. It just kind of bounced around my body and just had nowhere to go. I would wake up in the morning feeling absolutely dreadful because of all these. It was like a flu kind of, you know, that like muscular feeling of a flu, and you just, I actually can't lift my limbs.
Like there's weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, like physically pulling you down, and my jaw was sore, my teeth were sore from at night. I would have been probably clenching so much. I was just constantly kind of braced for like fight or flight, you know, and I was so anxious that I didn't feel hungry, so I lost a lot of weight. I just couldn't put food into my mouth, and I was so anxious that the hormones that are involved with anxiety would be cortisol would be the main one, which is the stress hormone. And when you produce a lot of cortisol, it makes it hard for you to produce the kind of counter hormone, which is called melatonin, which helps you sleep and helps you calm down in the evening and settle down. So I was not able to sleep like at all for months on end. And if I did sleep, it was this really fearful, horrible dreams, like waking up just like shaking, and I'd have to get into like a bath with Epsom salts and try and like move it out of my body. And when I did that, I would start to feel a little bit better. And I learned over time never to stay in the bed in the morning when I felt that way, because it never resolved until I moved it. I had to physically move the anxiety, the energy through my body, and that helped a lot. But yeah, it was very physical. I completely shut down and pulled back from everything in my life. Like any social event I wasn't able to manage. I just was afraid that I would feel. And it wasn't that I was afraid of anything that would happen, or there was nothing that I was like, it's this that I'm anxious about. I just got stuck in an anxious mode where everything made me feel uneasy, and I constantly felt like raw and exposed, and even like the bright lights it just all would have been too much. And for me, like what really got me was the fear of the fear. So like I could just be sitting here thinking, oh my God, like I can't believe this is happening to you, and it would just erupt. And it was people usually say like, oh, I'm so afraid that when I have a panic attack I might have a heart attack. I was never afraid of that. I was like, I know that I feel like I've done this to myself. Like I know there's nothing wrong, and I wish there was, so that I could say it's not me. Like I'm not doing this to myself. But that's the fear, is that you're willing it on yourself. And I want anyone listening to know you are not. Nobody would choose to struggle with their mental health that way, but it can make you feel like that, you know.
And what was the turning point for your anxiety? Like, what was the, like, say, the switch then for you?
I suppose.
Do you think, because you mentioned that you said you didn't know what it was, do you think when you did find out what it was that helped in a way?
Yeah, so by the time I was 25 and things got so bad, then I knew it was anxiety, because it was so strong. And I was like, okay, maybe this whole time it's been anxiety and I never knew. So it helped long term in that I was finally confronting what has probably always been there. But it was really scary for me to realise that and confront that, and to realise that whole time, like, there was never probably anything wrong with my digestive system. And to have the awareness that you can, like, not that you would choose it, but that you can have such a physical reaction to something in your mind, was very sort of worrying for me at the time. But the turning point was, I remember I would have done anything to feel better, and this is like 2014. Were you guys born then?
Yeah.
So there was nobody was talking about anxiety then. Like, it wasn't the thing to do. It was like you would only put your best foot forward. So I wasn't broadcasting it like I do now. And I remember having all these misconceptions about, have to get rid of it, and like I was saying, like this cure and this idea of it being something that came along and I had to just now take it away. So I was Googling everything, like, looking for an answer, and coming across all these things that promised me, do this one session of this and it will make it all go away. And of course I was like, sign me up, and I was like begging my mom, please, like, take me halfway across the country to go to one of these sessions. I don't even know what it was, like complete and utter sorcery and load of shite really. And I went to a session and had this guy kind of plug all these like electrodes onto my head, and he was like, so I'm just going to play some calming music, and then blah blah, when you leave it's going to be gone. And I was like, okay. And I fully believed, like, the placebo effect was so strong. I fully believed that this was going to work for me. And I walked out of there saying to my mom, like, I'm grand now, I feel absolutely fine. And of course later on, when I would feel a bit anxious again, I crumbled, and I had one of the worst panic attacks ever then, because I thought, oh my God, it didn't work. Oh my God, I am beyond help here. So because of where we were culturally at the time, I wouldn't have had the awareness to know that what was happening to me was actually quite normal, but I was so vulnerable to things that were promising me things that never made sense to begin with,
I feel like education nowadays is power, isn't it?
Yeah.
That, like, people like yourself can broadcast about anxiety, whereas you were saying, like, in 2014 it wasn't really out there. So I feel like that is one thing our generation is sort of blessed with, is we can actually understand things now.
I think so. Like, I mean, even just having this conversation, like, I could not have imagined, in 2014, two lads, your age would not have been sitting down and having this conversation. I would probably have had to convince two lads then that mental health is a real thing and that it's not like something that you just kind of buy into. It's part of your health. So I do think we've come a long way, and like it's so normal now to have even just, like you said, like the education, the awareness of like how I hope they're teaching it in school, like the nervous system. Like, I didn't have a clue about any of that until I had to confront it and felt so bad that I had to learn. I had to learn all those things, and that was like, things got so bad where I had no choice but to turn towards it. But I do still think that even though we talk about it more, like the pressures have kind of increased, and like I think your generation has a lot to contend with like constantly being plugged in online. I don't know if you guys are on social media, but like it's so hard to avoid. And whether, even if it's not social media, just the lure of being like seeking dopamine and seeking like a hit of something that would make you feel entertained or gratified, or something like shocking even, and then all the news from around the world that we see constantly. We were never meant to have access to the information we have now to that extent. We were only ever designed to just be in our little tribes and like know our few local people, and so the onslaught of information and the abundance of like the access we have to everything now is so much more than our poor little brains can handle. And like even you guys, like you're doing so many other things than just school and apprentices and the podcast and everything. Like there is a pressure there, and it is amazing on one hand that you're so driven, but it's almost like I have to have all the plates spinning and like cover your bases and give yourselves all the opportunities in case one avenue doesn't pan out. So I do think there's a lot of pressure now. So the anxiety is still there, and it needs to be addressed more and more. And like also another thing was COVID, which I don't know what age you guys were for that, but like it was something we just pretended like it never happened once it was past. And that really left a mark on, like, even if you don't feel it, even if you didn't care about COVID, or you didn't connect to it, or you didn't even mind being at home a lot. Some people loved it. It's when your body is told, when your nervous system is told again and again that if you step outside your front door, you're actually like putting yourself at risk of survival. That goes in, that registers over time. And then fast forward, we're told, oh, it's fine now, it's safe, like you can go on, be in a club, be in a wherever, be in like a busy place. And your body can't make the leap from, okay, well, just because you're telling me I'm okay doesn't mean I actually feel now that I can't trust that it's safe. So all of those things have made our collective anxiety, I think, much more of an issue. But at the same time, so grateful that it's not a taboo subject anymore.
Do you think educating yourself on it helped in a way? But I feel like even when you know everything in your head and you have all the right steps in front of you and you have these systems in place, sometimes when things hit you, all of the systems just like shut down, and everything in your head just automatically switches off, and you feel like you're back in square one, even though you've went through all the processes, you have the plans in place and all. How do you think you deal with that?
It's so true, and I do think like I would not be where I am, and I would not have overcome it if I didn't sort of invest that much into understanding myself and the body and anxiety and how it lives and how it moves, and like having that. The science for me was so phenomenal because it stopped me blaming myself, and it stopped me picking apart myself and saying, no, this is what happens in a body that's stressed or anxious, and it's made me stop fearing it. So overall, outside of the moments of really acute anxiety, over time I started to think differently about anxiety. I started to think differently about myself. I started to really be okay with it and be like, yeah, well, of course, maybe you just have a different sensitivity to someone else who can handle way more, or maybe they just haven't felt it yet. It just hasn't unearthed itself yet. But when it comes to the really hard moments, you're totally right. Like, it all goes out the window, and I see it now. Like, I have a 5-year-old little boy, and I am learning so much about the nervous system through him because it's so active and it's so like switched on. And when he is really upset, when he's having a meltdown, that is not the time. When he's in that fight or flight, and he's autistic as well, so it's a whole other ball game. But that is not the time where I can teach him a lesson or reach him cognitively or be like, or convince him that he's safe or that it's okay. That those are the moments you have to just ride out. And there are things, like there's one thing in particular that in those moments helps, and it's a technique, it's a psychological technique called flooding, and it's really just about rooting yourself into the ground and letting the surge of hormones, which they are, rise and fall, and trusting that it will pass. And it doesn't mean you have to like it, and doesn't mean you have to, you know, be celebrating, like it's a horrible feeling, but just knowing that you can, even the idea of getting your feet into the ground and rooting yourself and knowing that you can handle this surge of whatever's happening and that it will pass. And it's after the fact, it's in the aftermath of having one of those strong wobbles, and how you treat yourself then. That is where the toolkit comes in, and that is where the way you speak to yourself makes a difference long term. And it's outside of those really intense moments of overwhelm, and I still have them, not with anxiety, but like I still have moments where I get really backed into a corner and I feel overwhelmed because of what I'm dealing with my child, and I just feel like there's nothing I can do here, like I can't fix this and I can't change this. And in those moments my mind just goes into like despair, and it's only when I come out of that again, which I do, then I can be like, okay, let's look at this practically, let's look at this from a different angle. So not to expect yourself to whip out a toolkit in the middle of your worst moments and say, no, I'm going to start here and I'm going to go there. Like, it's too much. You just have to hold yourself through those moments and be like, I am here, I've got you. And it's always really helped me. I know I sound like I'm speaking with two personalities. It's always helped me to like know that there's an anxious part of me, and that we all have an anxious self. We all have a primitive self that is concerned with our survival, is looking for threats, is like, you know, questioning things. And we have a higher thinking part of ourselves that says, no, we're okay here, I've got you. And in those moments, if all you can manage to do is say, this is shit, but I'm here, we're going to be okay, that's enough. Like that is managing it really well.
Yeah, I think sometimes you do just have to, a lot of people just try and run from their problems, don't they? Just constantly, like, that new thing, depression can't hit a moving target, and like you're just constantly on the go, you're
People
constantly
say that.
doing, yeah, it's like this thing going around now, and it's like you try and escape it in a way by just flooding yourself with all of these different things to do, but then all of a sudden, like when you don't have something to do, or when you sit down for a minute and
comes over you,
everything comes at you at once. And I think it is important sometimes to just sort of turn around and face it, isn't it? And just realise, right, I'm actually in a bad stay here. You just need to accept the fact that you are in one, instead of trying to run from it. And then when you do accept the fact, then you try and go from there then and try and pick yourself back up.
So that's a bit like what happened to Justin Bieber. I think he was on tour and he had a load of anxiety that he didn't deal with, he said. And I think it was the Justice tour. He was meant to come to Dublin, never came, because it was just at one moment he just sat there on tour and it just all come over him and he had to cancel the whole tour then.
Yeah, and that's obviously he's on a completely different level of like pressure and expectation, but that is the result of pretending something's not there and running away from it. And like, absolutely, it's so important to understand that your nervous system, and it's in your nature to want to run away from something that doesn't feel right. And actually your brain is convinced there is something. It doesn't know the difference between a tiger launching at you and like someone in school who's a bit of a bully who makes you feel like it's the same system that's reacting. It doesn't, the mechanics of what it is can change, and it doesn't really matter. But obviously you want to flee. It's natural to, and it's instinctive to want to flee that feeling and to want to rush to feeling better. But it's not how it works with mental health. And like, think of all the movies and TV shows and books and stories where, you know, the person who is struggling is convinced not to show it and not to ask for help. And like, it never ends well. Like, it always becomes so much worse. And I completely understand that feeling. And I didn't want to be in my body. I hit a really low point when I was once when I was maybe 17, and then again when I was 25, where the first time it was like I felt so at odds with all my peers, like all my friends who were going on a 6-year trip and like wanting to get as far away from their parents as possible, and I was feeling so unwell all the time that I was like, I don't even want to go further than, like, I don't live too far from here. I lived in Glasnevin, and I went to DCU because I would not go to UCD to like the open day.
Yeah.
I was like, I have to be near home, and I lived with all these constraints, and it was so hard. But I didn't want to know that part of myself. I did not want to feel it. I wanted to run away. I would have done anything to feel better. And that's why I hit that point of saying I'd rather just not be here anymore twice. And nothing changed, and nothing gets better mental health wise, or even if it's not a mental health condition, but more of like something tangible that's going on in your life, until you are willing to turn towards it, until you can look down the barrel of your fear and say, okay, like, I'm here, like, show it to me, do your worst, you know, let's see what's so bad about this moment. And I write about this in the book, actually, like, of that kind of hitting rock bottom where I really did feel like I was on the floor physically. I was lying on the floor thinking, like, it's happened, like, the worst has come to pass, you have fallen apart, I wasn't able to work, I felt like I had lost a lot of the progress. I was such a diligent student, like, I had ambitions, and suddenly just none of it was there anymore. And I had to sort of, in a weird way, feeling like it's all gone so to shit, was sort of liberating, because I could say, okay, well, here we are now. Like, this is the
you
part,
know where you stand.
yeah, this is the part you feared the most. And like, can I be brave enough to look around and like look at the parts of myself that maybe I didn't want to, like, can I look at that sad, scared little girl who is always going to be in there until I say, I'm here and I've got you and it's okay. And I hate the idea that people think depression can't reach a moving target, because at some point you have to stop and slow down. And like, obviously physical movement is really, really beneficial for mental health, but addressing it is the hardest thing you'll ever do if it's something that, you know, even things like addiction or depression is so hard to address. And anxiety is so much more will like be at you, and you know, the panic attacks will interrupt your day, that you kind of have no choice but to pay attention to it, whereas I think other things can kind of go under the radar, but they will only grow arms and legs until you can say, okay, like, this is where I am, what do I need in this moment. And I think it's so in our nature, and I think it's really so much more so for Irish people, and probably for men as well, to be like, get a grip, you know, get on with it. And we're so self-critical because we believe somewhere along the way we were told that tough love and being really hard on ourselves will motivate us out of a mental health struggle, and it does the complete opposite. It's like, it satisfies the anxiety in that you're launching an attack on yourself, and then the anxiety is like, okay, we're doing something here, we're attacking the source of the problem, which is ourselves, and all you're doing is stepping on the pedal of that cycle of activation, of fight or flight, and you're just keeping it going. But when you can say, and there's so much science to this as well, which is why I can kind of buy into it, when you can say, you know, this is really hard, it doesn't matter what anyone else is going through, it's totally irrelevant, but this, for me, for my body right now, this is hard, whatever is going on, even if you can't put your finger on it, I'm not feeling great right now, I'm feeling anxiety right now. What do I need in this moment? What's the one thing that might make me feel a little bit better today or tomorrow? Or, you know, what's the one thing that might support me better? And that alone pumps the brakes on that sequence of stress events in your body. But that is so hard. And in our culture, I think so hard for men in particular to be that kind to themselves, because it seems like get over yourself, and it seems self-indulgent, but it's kind of hacking your nervous system's, the way it functions.
Do you think, in a weird way, anxiety gave you a purpose by educating yourself on it and then sort of spreading the word and helping people?
Yeah, I like to think that. I remember waking up, actually I didn't really wake up because I was never properly asleep, but it was one of the worst times with the anxiety, when I was fully confronting that this was what was going on and this is who I was, and maybe I'd never be the same again. I woke up and I said, I'm going to take this experience and I'm going to try and help other people about it, because the first time I think it was on Facebook at the time, I don't know if people are still on Facebook, but I decided that I had to say something, because I was working in the media and I was very kind of visible. I was interviewing movie stars all the time, not as famous as the people you get, but a few big names, and I was doing well in the like media industry in Ireland, and then I disappeared and I was not well, and I wasn't on social media, and everyone was only on there showing the best things and their, you know, holiday snaps and everything. So I felt like I can't be on social media if I'm going to pretend like I'm okay, because I will explode. Like, I will actually just disintegrate. So I remember I went on Facebook and I was at home in my pajamas, looked like shit, felt like shit, and I just wrote a post and said, I've been really quiet on here for a while and this is why. And I just said something about, you know, experiencing anxiety and realizing that your mental health is so important. And that felt so scary to do because I was like, right, I'm going for it now. And ever since then, I've never, ever again felt afraid to vocalize having a hard time in any way. And it's a weird paradox because I am really confident about my vulnerability and I will talk to anyone about it, and I want anyone else to feel that it does not say anything. It says more about you if you can acknowledge the parts that you find hard. So not to sound like holier than thou, but like I've made it my career now, and I was so interested in understanding what was happening to me and why, and then realizing it was happening to so many other people of my generation who were told, you know, endlessly, put the head down, keep going, if you have to cry, go outside, you know, that mental health is for the weak and blah, blah, blah. And we were all suffering so much of trying to do everything and like falling apart behind the scenes. So I just said, right, well, I'm really comfortable talking about this, and I was a writer and I can write and I can articulate what I'm feeling, and I for so long couldn't. And I wish I could go back in time and have had someone do that for me, whether it's, you know, me speaking. I know your audience is probably younger. I didn't have that person, and I so desperately needed it and wanted to know that someone was just like me and like had been to those depths and came out the other side. So I really wanted to try and just turn it into something useful. And yeah, it just kind of worked out. I remember I was writing for the Irish Times some health articles, and I wrote about my very step-by-step way, you know, where people tend to go wrong and where they should start. And then a publisher just read that and picked it up and contacted me and said, have you ever thought about writing a book? And at that moment I was like, okay, this is all, for whatever reason, this is happening for a reason. And I was meant to, even though it was dreadful and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, I wouldn't change it now.
Where did you get the confidence from to pursue this career? Like, from being that young girl, as you said, suffering with anxiety and missing half a fifth year, to then suddenly going and doing like talks and things like that. Like, do you remember your first talk and how that felt?
Yeah, I was very nervous. Yeah, I don't know where I got the confidence from. I guess I've never been particularly like academic. I was good in school. I did my homework most of the time. Like, I would never have not done my homework. I would never have, you know, turned up late or given cheek or anything because I was afraid. I so wanted to be a good girl. I never wanted to be in trouble. So it wasn't that I was really intelligent. I was just quite afraid. And then when it came time to college and stuff, people were kind of falling into their areas of expertise, and I was like, how can you know you want to be a biochemical engineer, if that's even a thing? I was like, how can you know that? I just like chatting to people and I like music and I like this and that. And so I didn't really know where I would land or where I would fit or what I could do. So I've kind of felt like a bit of a spoofer in that I've just managed to make this my career. But I think being confident in being vulnerable and talking about human things, for some reason, it's something most people find hard to do, but I didn't. And I think the reason I don't is because I'm desperately looking for validation all the time. Like, so I'm not just sharing like some Mother Teresa trying to make everyone else feel better. It actually makes me feel better when people say, oh my God, me too. Or, oh yeah, I was like that. It makes me feel like someone is saying it is okay for you to be who you are, how you are. Yeah, so it goes both ways. So I was always chasing that validation and really wanting someone to know that, to tell me it was okay, and to tell, and still to this day, like to know that it's okay to be fragile but still show up and do a good job and be professional and like actually achieve things and do really well. So I think the confidence kind of comes from, I don't know what else I'd be doing, because I didn't really feel like I had many other skills or interests really. So I feel like a bit of a spoof for half the time, but that's probably where the confidence comes from. I have to just make it work.
And what did you learn as you educate yourself on it and as you start doing the talks? Like, what exactly is anxiety, and is that what you learned? Like,
yeah, so I I mean, you can very easily understand very quickly like what anxiety is, and it's the difference between stress and anxiety. And anxiety is a nervous system response to stress, a prolonged stress in our life. Stress will be more of like I'm worried about this thing. Anxiety will be more like I'm worried, but I don't really know why. So that's kind of the difference. But in doing the talks, sorry, I forgot to answer your part about the first talk I ever did. I was quaking in my boots, but I just knew like I'd feel better afterwards. It was a different kind of anxiety. Like that's performance-based anxiety. That's something that's going to rise and then it's going to fall as soon as you're done. And I was feeling like all the nervous symptoms beforehand. But I was okay with that because that makes so much sense to me. And I like to most speakers, like they'd feel that and actually you'd be worried if you didn't feel it, because then you probably wouldn't be really turned like alert and like thinking of things that could go wrong or checking for wires that you might trip over. So like if the fear in that regard is actually kind of helpful. But overall, like every time I do a talk, it's gotten easier to, like today I was able to have like caffeine before and I wouldn't have done that years ago. It doesn't knock a feather out of me anymore, but I still produce lots of adrenaline because you're still performing and you're still like giving your best, and so I'd still be kind of flattened afterwards. But I guess the big takeaway is to just really bring anxiety back to your body and your nervous system. And I know I was just constantly saying those words, nervous system, but it's not like something people have to buy into like as an ideology or as like a personality. It is just a system in our body, and our brains, God love them, are no longer fit for purpose. Like the brains that we're dealing with were designed, like I said, for those primitive times when we were looking out for threats and there were threats. We've been completely leapfrogged into the modern world, and it's all quite a lot, but the threats are different, but the body still reacts in the same way. So we're constantly trying to override these evolutionary kinks and these sequence of events in our bodies that are happening as they were designed to, but no longer make sense. And I think for me, going into teasing all that apart and helping people relate to that and move away from thinking, Jesus, what is wrong with me? Like I'm a mess of a person. Why can't I get it together? That is where people start to have power and start to feel less afraid and start to really get in the driving seat of their mental health and however it shows up for them.
If you could go back and give, say, young Caroline advice, what would you say?
Ooh, so many different things. I think I would want her to know that, I know this sounds silly because like if I say like it's okay to be different and to not fit in, but I know also that at that age it's so important to someone at that age to fit in, like it's you're wired to need that. But I guess to just realize that this will not take from you, this does not undermine who you are as a person or who you are as a friend. You are going to have a full, wonderful life. You're going to be a good mother. Like you're going to find it challenging, but you will still go on to do great things in spite of the anxiety that you're feeling right now. And that it isn't in no way a reflection of you in any negative way. And actually you're going to be really grateful that you have that like really strong interoception, that you can know yourself so well. And so many people who right now you're looking at enviously, they're going to deal with that much, much later when it's probably harder to unpack. And you doing the work now when you're younger, it's brutal, but it's laying the foundations for like you being a really strong, solid person when you're older.
Tell us about the book. What was the process like and how did you know what you wanted to put in it?
So this book is my 4th book and it's called Everything I Wish I'd Known About Anxiety. And the process it's very straightforward. It's because I write journal, like I'm a journalist. Well, not really a writer. I feel like a journalist sounds like someone who's on the front lines of war zones, and that is I'm not that. But I can write, and I would write features for different magazines and things over the years. So the structure of the book, what you do there, it's like an essay in school, right? You just think like, what's the topic here and what do I want to say here? And you work on a really solid structure, and then it's just like writing essay after essay after essay after essay, and then it all comes together. So the process is very, very, with nonfiction, it's very straightforward. And this book follows on, or it's kind of 10 years since I was writing that very first book, the book that kind of set me on this path. So it was 10 years of like information that was already in there and learnings with the podcast and all the things that I've talked about here that I didn't know then and that I wouldn't have like even included in the first book, all the stuff about self-compassion versus self-criticism. And there was so much more I still wanted to say, and there was so much that I realized people still weren't getting, and were still getting wrong about anxiety, and still making themselves suffer so much more than they needed to because of these misunderstandings. And also because of what I said about like the pressure is increasing these days, and COVID, and you know, the absolute shit show that the world is right now. And like, I'm sure your generation is so much more aware of it than I would have been about what was going on in the world at the time when I was younger, because we didn't, unless you sat down and watched the 6 o'clock news, like you didn't know. So I felt that there was so many new people arriving at anxiety who, when you find yourself in that overwhelm, it's very hard to be like, let's sit down with this and think about what's happening here, because you're just panicking and you're just like, oh my God, I want to feel better. So I still felt like there was a need for something that was very clear and almost like chronological. And a lot of books about anxiety help people, you know, understand what it is as a concept. And this book is kind of prescriptive in that it tells you what to do and where to start. And that's what people, I think, want when they're overwhelmed. And that's what I wanted. And the most common message I'd get, DM that I would get, is, okay, I know that I'm anxious, or I know what anxiety is and I get that now. Like, what do I do? Like, I don't know where to start. Or like a parent messaging me and say, my teenager is in school and he or she is suffering tremendously. I don't know where to turn them to. So I really wanted to be so like, this is where you start. Don't go straight to this point, because if you miss all of this other stuff, change won't last and you won't actually meaningfully overcome this mental health challenge. So I was really sure about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. So the experience of writing it and putting it together was just organising all that was always in there, and trying to rewrite what I first wrote, because when I wrote that first book, like, I was still really coming out the other side. I was still getting back on 2 feet. It was so much I still didn't know. And while I'm so grateful for that book, and I know that it has helped so many people, I've had a lot of lived experience since then. And I think, like, you think you have everything figured out, and then if you become a parent, like, you realize it's so humbling. And like, having a child now who I can't mold into, like, what I can't apply my tools and learnings and be like, just be a perfect person, because he's his own person, he has his own challenges. And so I've had to learn so much in that, where I can't control everything. And, you know, it's a different kind of anxiety where I'm worried about him and thinking about what the world is like these days. So there was so much in there that I felt would make the book kind of interesting and a unique perspective. So it's kind of part memoir, part guide, very practical and really, really relevant, I think, for your age group, because I write a lot about my teenage years in it, and that felt like social suicide at the time, to be different, to dare to be different. And I can say it now, but for so many years after, even in my 20s, I wouldn't have even ever had the words or the language to say I was not okay when I was like 16, 17, 18. I wanted to just hide under my mammy's duvet and never leave, and wake up when I was fully grown. And yeah, that it's just, I know it's a really, really hard time, and you've got everything going against you hormonally and everything. So I hope this book will do something for that generation as well.
And tell us about the podcast. When did you start the podcast?
The podcast came after, I think it came after the second book, and this is how many years ago? I don't know. Podcasting was so new at the time. It was really new in Ireland. It was kind of taken off in the UK, and it was so raw and rusty and like ramshackle. I was just in my bedroom, and to be honest, it hasn't changed very much since then. But I just thought it might be like a nice complementary add-on to the book, and it turned out it just sort of, the timing was right. The subject hadn't really been covered, and I decided that, you know, I didn't know it was going to become something I would keep doing, and I didn't know it would become something like that would earn me money at all. But I decided that I would try my best to keep it really focused on anxiety, because obviously there would be other podcasts that would explore mental health more generally, and you know, just well-being podcasts. And I just wanted to know that if someone was in as bad a state as I had been, they would find my series and know that every episode might speak to them or feel relevant. And my first episode was just me telling my story, and I was so scared to share, because I was like, I haven't a clue what I'm doing. I'm so technologically challenged, and I just put it out there, and it did well. I think that would not happen for me today, because of the like ubiquity of podcasts and stuff, and how everyone's willing to share their story, but I just got in at the right time and then took off from there. And it did really well in the UK because I got picked up by what's the word, like a network, who they were promoting so many if they were working with Irish podcasts, they were pumping them into UK audiences. So my audience grew massively in the UK, and to this day it's still my biggest audience, like way more than Irish. And I started interviewing people and wanted to just like talk to experts who could help amplify what I already knew and teach me new things all the time as well, from so many different backgrounds. Of like the neuroscience thing obviously has been a huge influence on me, or psychology, or like even talking to people who are like, you know, energy healers and letting them have their moment to say like how they interpret anxiety and what people need. And then obviously this has been the hard part, but it's getting people willing to sit down and just talk about their own anxiety. And those are the episodes, as you probably well know, do well, because we all want to hear from someone who's willing to lay it all on the table and that we can hear ourselves in, more so than we want to hear from the experts. And I'm barely hanging on to it, to be honest, because as you guys know, like podcasting, there's so much work involved, and I've often thought, okay, I've run out of episodes now. And to be honest, I just brought the series back to kind of coincide with the book coming out. But I don't know if I'll hang up the towel on it eventually and just let some other anxiety podcast take the lead. I kind of feel like I've given it my best, and I think it did what it did for a while, and was one of like, it made like number one a few times. It was like the top number one health podcast in the UK. It was on like 198 billboards across the UK, like with my mug plastered across like, you know, rural England. And yeah, I think it had its moment, so I don't know what the future of it will be.
What do you think's the best lesson the podcast taught you, or the best piece of advice you got off one of the experts, or even just a guest?
One thing that always sticks out, and I include in every talk I give, is a neuroscientist called Dr. Michael Caine, who I had on, who just so brilliantly explained anxiety in a way that just leaves no room for error or doubt. And he was the one who helped me understand, like he was showing me brain images and this mind mapping thing of a brain that it has self-compassion versus a brain that doesn't. And it was so, because I would have, at that point I would have been like, yeah, if you tell me to be nice to myself, like I'm going to punch you in the face, like, you know, that is not helping me at all. It was the last thing I wanted to be told. But when I could see, you know, unequivocally a brain that is being shaped by this, like it's the same way you can see a brain being shaped by mindfulness or meditation over time. And no, I don't have the patience for either of those things. I've never been great at it. But he said to me, Caroline, if self-compassion was a pill, each and every one of us would take it every single day. That is how powerful it is on a biological level. And I never forgot that, because it just made me stop thinking of it as like, it's not a lifestyle choice, it's just a physiological thing that you can't argue with, and made me be so much kinder to myself and changed everything for me, I think.
And what advice would you give to the younger generation out there?
Oh God, how long do you have? Like if someone is anxious, do you mean?
Yeah, if they're anxious, yeah.
Yeah, I think first of all, to trust that this is not your personality, it's something you're experiencing. It is not, I don't really agree with the idea of being diagnosed with like anxiety as a condition, because I think that gets people stuck into thinking that there was no point in doing anything, they'll always be that way, and it, you know, that's really boxes people in. I don't think it's the same as other diagnoses, which are more criteria based. I think we're all capable of experiencing anxiety, and it is not a determining factor of how your life is going to be at all. And to know that this is just right now, and you know, there are things you can do, and the most powerful thing you can do is to spend that time understanding what it is, what anxiety is, getting to know yourself. And I know we spoke about this already, like the nature of young people is to want to like resist and turn away from the things that don't feel good, but you will be so immeasurably benefited by that willingness to turn towards yourself at a young age, and get to know yourself and be okay with the things that make you different or that seem like weakness. They are not, like, they're going to be the things that you get ahead with eventually.
Yeah.
And yeah, don't peak too soon.
What do you think of the anxiety pills?
No? What pills? Like medication?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What do you think they help?
I thought this was a new like anxiety pill on the
No,
like
no.
under the radar that I didn't know about. Yes, so antidepressants are what are usually prescribed for anti-anxiety benefits, and I went on medication when I was in that really hard time, and it was kind of after I did loads of therapy and after, you know, I was trying to do like address the reasons that I thought were part of it, and I was very much confronting it, but I couldn't get my head above water. I would say I was so physically unwell. I got to the point where I said, I just think I need a bit of help here. And I think this stigma kept me away from it for so long, because I felt like reaching that point of saying I think I need medication felt like, well, you've lost it now, like this is rock bottom. And what I thought was like the most defining weak moment of my life was actually the strongest moment, because I said, I know I'm doing everything I can here, and you shouldn't have to prove it. Like, you shouldn't have to do everything there is and then beg for permission to suffer a little bit less. But that's where I was at the time. And I went on medication, and it's very different. Like, people, they might think of medication as like a Xanax or something that is a very short-term, fast-acting thing. That is, obviously, you want to exercise so much caution with those, because that is just numbing a feeling. They're very effective, but they don't address the problem overall. Whereas a longer acting, like a longer building antidepressant for anxiety, that's not something you can really like just pop one and get on with it. Like, that takes a while to build up in your system, and all it does is gives you a little bit of extra support there. It just, like, if you can visually imagine, you know, my head under the table and then my head above the table, and all it did was allow me then to benefit and access the tools that I just couldn't access. Like, I couldn't benefit from like the fresh air and the talks and the walks, because I was so physically addled, and my thoughts were so, like, I had spun myself into such an anxious state that I just needed a little bit of extra support. So I would never say a bad word about medication, because it literally saves people's lives. I know so many people who were so afraid to go on it, and now they are so much better off. It doesn't have to mean you're on it forever. Not everyone will have to go on medication for anxiety, and I got to such a bad place before I had any understanding of what was going on. So just because I knew it was anxiety, and just because I could tell myself I was okay or safe, did not mean my body was getting the message. Like, it took so much patience and time for that to all unravel. But it is not a quick fix. It did not make everything go away. It did not numb me. It did not mean I didn't have to still address so many other parts. I always describe medication as like one spoke on a wheel of all the things that you have to do to kind of take care of yourself. And it's just one thing. So in the book, which I kind of map out as there's a roadmap that takes you through like where to start. Medication is like a little kind of alternative route that you can consider, but you don't have, it's worth considering and understanding about, but it's not something everyone will, it's not like an unskippable stop on the roadmap. But yeah, I really, I know it's different for different age groups and stuff, but I think in Ireland anyway, like it's not my experience that like they're just, everyone's just handing out prescriptions to just try and like medicate a generation. My doctors were really, really diligent in making sure I was addressing it, and so I did have to kind of beg and convince them, so it wasn't the case of like, here, just give her some pills and send her off at all.
Do you think there's a thin line between like when you face your problems, obviously you talk about them and you tell people about them, and it's kind of like, it's not your personality for a while, but it's definitely like a shadow for a while. I think there's a thin line between talking about your problems and dragging them with you, like whereas some people talk about them a bit too much, where it's like they drown themselves in their own problems and they can't escape it because it's all they know, it's all they talk about, it's all they bring with them. Like, yeah,
I think that's fair. And I suppose for me, like me personally, it's different. I can separate now. I couldn't it took me a while to learn that, like, and I guess it's like a therapist in a way, like being able to like absorb everyone's stories and go home and not take it with them. Like, I can talk about anxiety and talk about my experience and know that I'm doing so in like a semi-professional capacity, and then go home and not feel like I'm someone who is an anxious person, because I don't feel that way anymore, and it doesn't factor into my life apart from it being the subject of my work, unless for whatever reason I feel anxious or something, which is totally reasonable. But I think what you're saying is kind of like, if someone is just sort of wallowing and drowning in it and talking around and around in circles about it and not taking the steps. Like, talking about it is so important, but like it has to be followed by some sort of action or direction of some kind. And I suppose the difference is, like, so in the book I talk about self-compassion and obviously being like, that's the kind of fuel you need. Nothing will change without that. But self-compassionate accountability is how I end it. And that's turning towards yourself, thinking about the things that you need. And that might be like, I want to talk about it and validate myself and say, oh yeah, this is shit, and I want to wallow in it a bit. But the accountability part holds yourself to a standard of, like, what is best for me long term here. Like, yes, I might want to have a chat about this, but is it doing me good? Is it doing me any favors to keep stuck on this topic without sort of planning or taking some action in some way? So like being kind to yourself while also there being some movement to it, and some sort of like, some days you'll want to lean into it and some days you'll want to pull back completely, and you'll know the difference as time goes on. But it can be a double-edged sword for sure.
So do you think that there's no perfect time to transition from one to the other? It's just whenever you're ready, like, that you stop sort of bringing it with you?
How do you mean? Like, transition from what to what?
So like, transition from like talking about all the time or like validating yourself. Do you think there's a time when you should start to come out of that and stop trying to validate yourself and start trying to move on?
I think it's sort of an ongoing process. So like, you know, it talking about it and checking in with yourself and like taking a temperature on where you're at on a daily basis, like that might really help someone alongside. And like if you're doing therapy and stuff, and like CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, was really, really, really helpful for me at the time. So that asks like you to be talking about it quite a bit, or journaling can be really helpful for people. But there comes a time, I guess, where you feel like I've addressed it now for today, or I've indulged in the worries and the fears. So now I'm going to just redirect my energy because actually I'm a bit exhausted. So sometimes what you need is to be heard and validated and like have your reality witnessed. And then sometimes you just need to switch it off. And like I need that, you know. So if I have a hard time, you know, my husband or whatever will be like, do you want to talk about it or do you want to be distracted? Because like those are two different things. And sometimes you do want a solution, or do you just want me to hear you? And again, those are two different conversations. So I think, you know, you're always, if you're working on yourself, you're going to be checking in, you're going to have that self-awareness and that sort of feedback with yourself. But you'll know if it's the kind of self-analysis that's keeping you stuck or helping you move forward. And I think only you can know that yourself.
And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I will be... What's nearly 38 plus 5? I'm 38 next month. See, you forget everything from school. So like, what, 42? Probably wrong. Yeah. I don't know. I've no idea where anything, like career-wise, I've never know what's coming down the line, because I've just, as I say, spoofed my way here. I don't know how I've done it, but I have. I'm about to start a master's.
Do you think that's imposter syndrome?
Probably.
Spoofed your way here? I don't think you did spoof your way there.
Do you know what I feel?
4 books, like that's...
Yeah, 4 books and a lot of knowledge, and
Maybe
probably
can't do that in the whole lifetime.
thousands of
Do you know
people
what?
help.
And I always say, like, I feel like a monkey could do what I do, or, you know, like it's not that hard, or anyone could get published. And I probably do talk myself down a bit, because to me it kind of comes like second nature, whereas like my husband is an engineer and I'm like, what? Like that requires skill, or that requires like real intelligence. So I shouldn't be so mean about myself.
But he probably thinks the same way about you.
He does.
He might not think that about himself, so I think that's
so
just...
he would absolutely die if he had to get up and give a talk like I did today, whereas I just go and do it and go home and I'm like, oh, that was nothing. You know, so yeah, it goes both ways, I guess. But in 5 years' time, I love the way you're not doing 10 years because now we're too old to go that far ahead. So yeah, I'm going to do this master's, and I wanted to do one for ages, and I'm actually really excited because now I actually give a shit. And when I was in college before, I just didn't know what else to do, and it was like you just had to go to college like as and the next natural step, but I didn't know who I was or what I wanted to do. And I think it's crazy that we are asking people to figure that out when they're like 18. So I was totally zoned out of my undergrad, and I did actually already do a master's. It was in film and TV, and I couldn't even tell you one thing about it because I was just there. But now I want to learn. Now I'm so passionate about this, and I want to add a bit of gravity to everything I already do, because like this whole time I've had to draw on my own experience, and I can only ever speak from the perspective of, well, this is how I feel, or this is what I felt. And I think being able to move a little bit into like more expertise will kind of legitimize that, and maybe open up more opportunities. And maybe, you know, if things all go okay with my son and he's on his own 2 feet and everything, I would maybe see myself like working in a company that really cares about their staff and helping change systems like that, and still doing the talks and stuff. But I think I want to still be in this space, but I would like to not be so dependent on social media, because it's not great for anxiety or mental health in general. The constant
numbers
and like I need to stay relevant, and am I like posting enough, and if you lose followers, it's like, what have I done, and linking it so much to your self-worth, and like no amount of awareness on my part makes that part easier. So,
control the controllables. That's what me and Glenn always say. Once you are happy about what you posted to the best quality, the best let's say content that you can, the best caption, all the best time, you think all the rest is just out of your control. You just make sure everything on your part is good, and once you're happy with that, then there's not much else you can do.
But I think you should never do things for the metrics and for the numbers. Like
it's so hard.
Like even for example, like when we interview someone, like I don't be thinking to myself, oh yeah, I hope this gets 10k likes or 20k likes. I'm like, yeah, I've always wanted to interview that person. I've done it, and I just
we
put
look
it out of
at
my head.
like a catalogue as well.
Like
when like say if something does happen and like things take off or whatever, people won't be able to just say, oh, yous are lucky, yous are very lucky. You'd be like, nah, look, have a look, here's our catalogue, we've had this person, and even not even just for that, just for ourselves, and for if anyone else wants to go on and have a look at the page and see like, oh, what have these lads done, it's all there in the catalogue. Doesn't matter how many people liked or how many people saying it, just once the right people are saying it.
So true.
Because sometimes I think even with musicians, like, and not always the biggest hit song resonates with the most amount of people. That makes sense. Like there's a fellow I listen to, Juice WRLD, a lot, and a lot of his songs I listen to, they're not actually his number ones or his number 2 song, or his,
but they reach you.
Yeah. So that's what I think. Like that's the way I want the podcast to be. It's not just based around metrics.
That's a really good strategy to have. Like
not just number one, but resonating with people. Like not the best in the world, but resonating with people,
because everybody's different. Like even like we interviewed Akon the weekend, him and Neo both, but they both said 2 different pieces of advice to us.
What was it?
Akon's one was like, those who work get success, and then you asked Neo about love, wasn't it? His perception
I
of
had
love.
this mad deep question in my head. I said, what was your, like, he writes lots of love songs, and like from heartbreak to like the highest form of love, and I said, like, what is your perception of love? And he was saying, it's the strongest form of energy in the world. He said there's nothing that can break it down. There's nothing that you like need more or acknowledge more. I just thought that was
so cool. Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
What, like, is anything I'm saying resonating with you, and anxiety that you have felt? Is it something that features in your lives?
Yeah, I think the part you said, like, about just feeling where you are rather than trying to, like,
I think that's very important. I think I do.
Your problems.
I always just try and, like,
brush it off,
keep going, push forward.
Yeah, it works for a while.
It does work for a while, but then all of a sudden everything hits you at once. All of the struggles of whatever you took on your plate, all of the struggles of whatever was going on before you took all that stuff on your plate, and all of the struggles of trying to carry it for so long, everything at once then just hits you, and you feel so much worse than you probably would have if you had to just face that early on.
Yeah,
that's something I'm learning, not just try and run from, but actually just face it early, like, and try and...
And would you guys have, like, anxious feelings in your body and anxious thoughts at different times? Do you feel like it's something that you kind of carry, or...?
I think as well, like you said about, like, talking about it, I think helps a lot, rather than just trying to, like what you said, brushing it off in a way.
But it's hard to talk about, like, it is.
Yeah, what about your lad friends, like, is it...
Like, there is some that you just wouldn't
find the right audience.
Yeah, but there's some that you would reach out to, but even sometimes it's just like you just feel like you really need to get stuff off your chest, and you're just getting like blunt answers, or like
Yeah.
that, like it's not like they don't care, but they just don't know what to say. Nobody knows what to say, and you're just like, oh, I'll
Yeah.
leave this, you know what I mean?
I think something that people, somewhere along the way we were told that like to be a supportive friend means to give a solution or to try and fix a problem, and that's why we scramble to be like, well, have you tried this? And then the other person is like, well, obviously I've tried that, or like I didn't want to hear that right now. So for anyone listening, sometimes you just need another ear. You just need to take it out of your body and put it on the table, and like I call it like bleeding the radiator, and it's just to bear witness to you as a human and what you're going through, and they don't have to have an opinion, they don't need to suggest anything. It's just like, and if they feel like they relate, yeah, that always helps, but we don't need to rush in. We're not looking for that from our friends or from the people we turn to. We just want to feel safe enough to let those parts of ourselves give them a bit of breathing room.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's like lifting a weight off your shoulders or something.
Yeah.
Just not even getting a solution to it, but just taking it out of your head and putting it. And sometimes I feel like when you do talk about things, it puts you in like a third person perspective, and when you're actually reading back on what you said, say it's a text message, or you're actually like you start to like realise things that you wouldn't have realised, and some things actually that you said might have helped you get over.
Or they could have been things that you did realise, but you didn't come to terms with the realisation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. I'm like, the emotional intelligence here is not streets ahead of what it was when I was this age, and lads in my year like it. So fair play to you guys for being willing to like be in touch with that part of yourself. I know it's not easy, and especially for lads, I know it's not easy, but like you're going to go so far by not being afraid of that bit, you know.
What would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
When people ask me that question, all I can think of is my mother telling me never to shave above the knee, and that is not that's not relevant here, but it is good advice, because then it will never grow back thick and hairy. Okay, best piece of life advice. Ooh, you'll have to edit out my pause here while I think of it. What's the best piece of life advice?
Take as much time as you need. It's a deep question.
It's a deep question. I should have thought about this in advance.
Me and Glenn ask this question all the time
Everybody.
to everybody, and when people ask me, I'm still stunned. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just whatever pops
A
in your
lot
head
of people
in the
give
moment.
cliche answers though, isn't it?
But cliche answers are common. They're not common because they're cliche. They're common because they're the truth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
You know what I
become
mean?
cliche. Yeah. God, I'm completely drawing a blank. But things that have helped me or made a difference for me. Again, it sounds trivial, but like, this too shall pass. And I have a tattoo actually. I have a few. I started getting tattoos very late in the game. I don't know if you guys are into tattoos, but I have a tattoo that says amor fati, and it's like a Latin phrase, a love of fate, and it's just about this idea of trying to meet yourself right where you are.
I'm gonna write that down. Amor fati.
Amor fati. Yeah, and it's so like in my situation now with my son, I have this constant, all the time yearning to just like I say, fix it and improve it and like move past where we are and make things better, but I can't, because like his autism is not something I get to the end of. Like, it's just, you manage it. So I have to keep doing that flooding thing of being like, I'm here in this moment, I'm okay. Like, the weather can go all around me and I'm like the mountain rooted in here, and I don't have to love this moment, but I can just, well, it is about a love of fate. It's about trying to know that you are exactly where you are meant to be at this point in your life, wherever you are, no matter how hard it is. This is the moment you're meant to be in for whatever reason. So I'll leave it with that.
That's what people always say, everything happens for a reason, and I always sort of said to people, it's very easy to say everything happens for a reason when everything's going good.
Yeah.
But it's only when everything's going good you look back on the bad and realise that everything actually did happen for a reason.
Like, I don't really believe like that the universe gives a shit, you know, about like, oh, this is all some divine plan. Like, I'm just such a practical person, and I just like, but I do think that when you go through different parts of your life and you do look back, like it's comforting, or it helps you contextualize what you went through, to know that, well, physically and logically that wouldn't have happened if this didn't happen, and I couldn't be here if I turned down this road instead. So to be able to just to meet yourself right where you are And another thing actually is something that I include in my talk, and it's a quote that I could have done with so much when I was suffering, and it was, your body never asks you to fix it, it only ever asks that you meet it exactly where it is, and we're so reluctant to meet ourselves where we are. So I think that would be something I'd want people to take away as well.
Deadly. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wish we had have asked, or anything you think we can improve going into the next episode?
No, like, you're absolutely brilliant. I mean, I know that you're listening, and like you're thinking of questions based on like what we're chatting about, which is so, I've no notes at all. Like, it's just keep being curious and interested and open-minded, and that will give you the best conversations.
Thanks a lot. And where can people buy the book?
In all good bookshops and online, Amazon, wherever, Easton's, whatever. Yeah, and I hope that if people do buy the book, that, well, I'm really confident that it will make a difference for them. So I hope it reaches the people who need it.
Deadly.
So
Thanks a lot. Anything else you'd like to plug?
No.
Episode 72 wrapped
Wrapped up.